Good morning. Welcome to part 4 of Martin Healthcare Advisors, How to Make Your Rehabilitation Business Go from Good to Great. I'm Paul Martin, and I've enjoyed sharing with you over the past 3 segments. And today in segment 4, we're going to be talking about the metrics that matter the most. Let's go back briefly and just quickly cover what we've already discussed. Again, we advocate that you monitor and measure your operations against a target on a weekly basis. And we also are advocating to you that it's very important that you engage your staff in being a part of those weekly meetings and weekly discipline of discussing those metrics against the targets and creating action plans as to how to improve upon the operations from the previous week. Today, what we want to focus on is looking at the metrics that we believe will make the most difference in the success of your rehabilitation business in terms of adding value and adding profit to the business. So we analyze many different volume indicators as well as metrics. Some of those volume indicators are numbers of referrals, numbers of visits, numbers of units that we provide, the charges that we generate, the cash collections that we collect from insurance companies. The metrics that we look at charge per visit, we look at units of service per visit, we look at charge per unit, we also look at visits per referral, and we look at cash per visit. And one of the other variables and other metrics that we look at are what we call visits per FTE per day, and that's a measurement of productivity. So of all those volume indicators and metrics, which 3 of those metrics do you think matter the most when it comes to the profitability of your business? Well, the 3 that we believe and that we see the most successful rehab companies monitor and measure and watch very carefully are these 3. First is the cash per visit, or your collections per visit. This is a direct reflection on how well your therapists are coding for the services that they're providing, as well as the efficiency and the effectiveness of your collection department and billing and collections team at sending out clean claims and making sure that those claims are collected in a timely manner. It's an aggressive pursuit of insurance companies as well as patients in order to collect for the services that you have provided and the services that you have paid your staff to provide. And we find that companies that have efficient systems within that billing collections department as well as the coding have higher cash per visit than those companies that do not. On average, as an industry benchmark, we see that companies that tend to show profitability are somewhere in a range of $80 or more in cash per visit. The second metric that we see is vital to the success of your business is the metric visits per referral. In hospitals, they would consider that length of stay. So it's the number of visits that each one of your new patients on average will be in your clinic. As an average or a benchmark that we see nationwide is typically 12 or greater. Those companies tend to be profitable. When companies get to be, say, 8 or less, those companies tend to not be as profitable. And don't get me wrong, and don't confuse what I'm saying as that I'm not saying that you should be attempting and working towards clinical excellence and getting those patients into your facilities and getting them well and discharged from your facility as quickly as you possibly can. That's not what I'm not suggesting changing that practice pattern in any way, shape, or form. But what we find is that when businesses and clinics are struggling with visits per referral, it is not based on the fact that they are clinically superior to a business or a clinic that is seeing patients more visits per referral. Some of the keys in making sure that you're getting maximal visits per referral is first and foremost front desk operations. So where those patients are being scheduled is absolutely critical in making sure that you are getting the maximum visits per referral. Secondly is in the interaction of the therapist with the patient, and whether or not that interaction is one that is promoting that patient is needing and is required to attend physical therapy on a 2 to 3 times per week basis, or are we very easily letting patients slip into 1 time per week, or not even scheduling at all. When we analyze our new clients and we look at the number of patients that are being scheduled from 0 times per week to 5 times per week, most business owners are shocked when they come to realize that many of their patients, active patients, aren't even being scheduled for the next week. Many are being scheduled 1 times per week, and very few are being scheduled 2 and 3 times per week, which in the rehabilitation industry we have found to be typical and clinically feasible. So it's focusing on that and focusing on that interaction from the therapist to the patient. We advocate that the patient be walked to the front desk after their initial appointment, and that the therapist communicates to the front desk, here's my patient, and I would like them to be scheduled 3 times per week over the next 3 weeks. So again, an average that we see, or an industry benchmark that we see, is 12. There are clinics that run at lower than that based on managed care agreements and based on diagnosis, but again, an industry benchmark that we see is 12. So companies that are achieving $80 per visit and 12 visits per referral, those two combinations, we would tend to believe that those two in combination would be generating a profit. The third is what we call visits per FTE per day. And the way in which that's calculated is as follows. Each staff member that is contributing directly to patient care, that would include therapists, physical therapists, occupational therapists, physical therapy assistants, occupational therapy assistants, as well as aides and or techs, athletic trainers. Those are all counted in the measurement of visits per FTE per day, or productivity. Now we assess a value to each one of those clinical members. And the value that we assess is for a full-time therapist, they would achieve a value of 1. For a full-time aide or technician, they would achieve a value of 0.3. And the reason that we give an aide or a tech a value of a 0.3 is that we believe that a therapist with a full-time aide or tech can achieve greater productivity at about 30% more than someone working completely by themselves. And if you take that value and you add it up for your clinic, and then you divide that number into the visits per day, it gives you visits per FTE per day. We find as an industry benchmark that those companies that are running at 10 to 12 or more in a day tend to be showing profitability, and those that are under 10 tend to struggle in terms of profitability. So again, in terms of cash per visit, $80 of cash per visit. In terms of visits per referral, 12 visits per referral or greater. And in terms of visits per FTE per day, 10 or more. Those tend to be the numbers that drive operational excellence and will drive your company to profitability. Last, before we leave our segment today, is that I want to make sure that we are all very clear as to why we're showing such a focus on operations. And the reason that we focus on operations is not because we don't believe that clinical outcomes and that clinical goals are not the most important goals in a business, but that if we don't focus on our operational metrics and our operational numbers, we find that without the operational focus, companies tend to struggle. And last is that you constantly and consistently need to be adding value to your business. And if we are measuring and monitoring operations on a routine basis, we find that those are the businesses that create the most value. Thank you. And we look forward to seeing you again, and thank you for your time today.